yet another episode of Voice of Focus. I am Sanyaolu, Juwon, and with me here is another Wala coverage.
I don't even like doing Wahala. You want us a way of tapping into the Wahala side of being. We'd like to welcome you on second episode of the podcast. I am Ọmọlọlá Pedro, and thank you for joining us.
Yes, and as you know, what we do here is practically educative. We have conversations specifically on issues relating to the workers, that is labor rights. Most of the kind of conversations that usually emits, the main.
The kind of conversations you will not find on regular shows, the ones that don't have one NBC don't like. Yes, the one NBC, the kind of conversations that I will not get sponsors for, and the ones that brands are not interested in.
So we are already the Safa podcast.
It's a Safa podcast, unfortunately.
Exactly. When I said you are a Wala couple, now you see same thing.
No, that's not true. I'm only trying to, do my job.
Okay, well, and special appreciations to the FES for this podcast. But as usual, we have the guests in the house.
Yes, we do have a guest, and our guest is a guest that is not ordinary. When there's this popular Aluta song, do you and song? Fine girl no dey o, inside Aluta.
Fine girl no dey o.
That line. It's a very cute line.
Should have reviewed it.
Because inside Aluta, find beauty. Get.
So if you are looking for revolutionary parties.
Yeah, revolutionary parties. Parties that when you see them, you would not expect that. Like they're not really.
End of the way, I was surprised today. So you shouting, Luther continue. I was there in front of police.
It's not send you to that extent. Today we have on the podcast a very, very, very active activist. For me now.
The other part of it is that let me introduce this. If by adventure you be looking for you probably get a later, especially when you want to call her for money. This one's picking your call. The Sapa is going viral these days. So people don't pick people's calls. So what if you are looking for this person and she stop picking your call? Just try to do for protest app.
Just tell her the protest happening and give your house address. She go call there. So you do physical billing instead of digital billing. Today we have on the show a very agile comrade. Most of the time when I go see protest ground, in fact, I don't think I have ever got into the protest ground before her.
No, she comes say there.
She comes say and she's at the front.
I think she also
with the banners.
You know what we are doing in bad governance protest? I was suspecting that maybe she kills a class. Yeah.
Get down, preach. That is how punctual this particular comrade is. And this is not a comrade that does not have a job outside activism. Because most of the time, there is this idea that activists and jobless people.
Yeah, I don't want to give you a job. I don't want fake life.
Comrades and people don't have what they are doing with their life because it's news at life. Because this particular comrade that I'm talking about, after this show, please drop your CV in the comment section so that.
I can claim my account.
No boy, we'll attend to that later. Our comrade is very generous. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome with us on the podcast today the ever active, agile, proactive, and punctual comrade Zikora Ibeh. There's nothing on now. Welcome to PLS here. Thank you so much. My name is Zikora Ibeh. Yes.
No proper introduction. No.
So you can't be
like this.
So that is Zikora first to get off and protest that. I had protest and I like everything. I work with corporate accountability and corporate participation Africa, and
It's to be heard. Yeah, and she's an activist and a researcher. You know, it's going when
Activists combine researching. That's going to be very strong. Because generally, activists speak from the position of knowledge,
Yes.
from the position of facts, from perspectful position. Perspective. You know, I know you studied English, so those fact checks. Or don't English check me.
I forgive you.
But when you now say public is also a research.
Researcher.
Get them.
Because before you say one, you know where you're going with. And when you try to be smart,
That's not that.
yeah, facts.
That's all right. So, Kwaya, Zikora, it's nice to have you here.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, so let me even pick from your introduction. You spoke about corporate capability and also which for me kind of give an impression that the kind of work you do is around, you know, holding corporations to account, including public sector. How does your work connect with the needs of the average working class people?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Like I said, my work is focused on corporate accountability, both at the state level and at the level of corporations. Yeah, so we know that government should exist naturally to fit the wants of the people and also realize the aspirations of the people, right? And part of those ideas is what makes up the governance processes. And when government is working, the people are happy, right? So most of the work that I do in collaboration with colleagues keeps interrogating governance processes at every time, especially the fact that we practice democracy. Are we really a democratic entity? Are we really a democratic society at heart? How participatory is government processes? How are citizens able to participate, to air their views, to say that, look, I have a say in the government of today or the government that I voted for. So our work proceeds to interrogate the structures. Are they open for participation? And then when we also talk about corporate structures, we also talk about other actors in society that are also enabled by government policies to do business, to act in such ways that influence the lives of people. So how are corporations acting? Are corporations anti-influencing best practices? Are they also respecting the rights of people? For instance, my work has to do with environmental justice. It has to do with public services. It has to do with public health, you know. And at every point in time, we're saying, do we have environmental justice? Yes. In places where you have corporations, multinational corporations working, you had stories of environmental abuse, of how you had oil leakages, how people had lost their livelihood as a result of corporate infractions. So we are interrogating this. How is it working? How are people able to demand justice? So just say that the work continues to derive its manifesto from the realities of the working class people. Working class people need water. Water is a fundamental human right. The working class people need water to survive. The working class people need good roads. They need electricity. They need to know that their lives are secure. They need to know that they can trust the government to uphold their welfare. So it is from this basis that we derive most of our actions. So how are these all working together to create the kind of society that is?
Thank you very much.
Can you like a specific context, an example of some of the book be like an instance where you had to add like some of the campaigns you undertaken or we done. Just forgive my fight. You are for you.
Yeah.
Alright. So like we want to get just one paper.
Okay, so for instance, one of the major thematic areas that we focus on is public services. We believe that government exists to provide some basic amenities that cannot be left to other actors to provide or cater cater for people, right? So public services like public water, like electricity, like public education. It has been our campaign for so long that public water cannot be left in the hands of commercial actors and private actors. And we have continued to decry the increasing commercialization of public water as well as public education, where the government says, oh, look, we can no longer participate in this sector. We think that the business of providing a fundamental service like water is not the business of government. So the business of providing education for its citizens is not the business of the government. So
What is now government business?
what is now government's business? So you see that the government continues to defund in priority areas like education, like water, like even electricity. As I speak to you today, I'm sure, I don't know if you're a bandit or you're a band A, right?
That's a bad.
But so they told us that the old NEPA was a problem, you know, it was corrupt, it wasn't living up. The language is efficiency. We need to privatize so that this sector can be more efficient, this sector can deliver more. As if it's not the same human beings that work in the public sector that still go to the private sector to work, right? And for instance, electricity sector, you've seen that for over how many decades we privatized electricity? Nothing.
I think it even gets worse.
It even gets
Yes,
worse, right?
No.
Yeah, so it's a problem. I mean, even the water sector. So people will tell you that the last time they received like a consistent supply of water in their houses, they turned on their public taps and water flowed, was in the 1980s. And you know, the 1980s was a time where government investment and control of water services was 100%. But now things have been privatized, nationalized, corporatized, yet you don't get all the points.
My take is that's very correct because I wanted to say that ever since I was born, till now,
You have no public water.
I've never lost it, but it's unfortunate. I've lived in different states in the country and I have never
Water proportion particularly
got taken water. And that will take me to the next question. You know, the issue of water protection and public water corporation. Why do you think it should be a concern for everybody? When I say everybody, I mean the average working class people of Nigeria, the politicians, private and public sector actors. Do you think it should be a concern for everybody, especially now that an average household in Nigeria is able to provide its own water? You know, you go to places now, people are digging their moles themselves. Everybody is a government in their own capacity, in their own terms. Do you think that with the situation of things regarding water, do you think people will still be interested in actions and campaigns around public water corporation?
Yes, thank you for that question. And it's an interesting question because, like I said earlier, water is a fundamental human right. I mean, the last time water that
Water.
you don't get anything.
Never in the Sanyaolu don't get inspired.
It just shows you how important water is. And the truth is that it's unfortunate that despite how important public water is for the working, not just for everybody, every society, because you need water for a variety of things. And without water, we cannot survive as a species, right? And we have seen that the lack of water too, public water to be particular, has felt like the spread of so many health problems. So the functionality of water is just too critical that you can't just overlook it. But the question you ask is important. Where you don't have water and people are now basically becoming the government themselves and providing water, do they now still need water? But the truth is that people providing boreholes for themselves is a symptom of a big problem. It's not the solution. So that every household, and yeah, some people don't forget that sticking boreholes is very expensive. It's not even cheap. Doesn't come cheap. So that some people have it, not everybody in society has it. It doesn't mean that water is not important. Instead, it is a clear sign of the problem in society, and people can no longer rely on government and are now going ahead to dig boreholes. First, the boreholes are expensive. They are sometimes also difficult to regulate. And there's also an environmental challenge that comes with everybody digging boreholes, but we can't help ourselves. And truly, people have to survive if the government is not providing. But there's also an environmental challenge. So that boreholes cannot be our final solution.
Because how many boreholes?
Because how many boreholes we have Nigeria to dig, right? But there are even other places that do not have boreholes. And so these people have to rely on long distances to get water. They still have to rely on safe sources to get water. And even in the places where they still have to rely on open surfaces, like streams, wells, because you don't have water, you also have a challenge in those kind of places. I'll give you an instance. You have the Niger Delta, which is one of the polluted, in fact, the most polluted region on this planet. And for many households in the Niger Delta, they are without public taps. And so when you go to the rural area, some of them still have to depend on open sources like streams and wells. And in those places, because of the political economy of oil exploration, you've seen that there's an environmental degradation because of oil leakages and also other environmental. One of the side isn't polluted so that these people cannot use it. So I think that we have, our society as a whole has a fundamental disrespect for the functionality of water. So the government doesn't think it is it's something that should be seen as an important priority to enable its citizens achieve the kind of life that they want to live. And in other circumstances, people treat water like water has no life of its own. Meanwhile, water is a living being and should be respected, and so it should therefore be granted rights itself to be able to breathe, just as you, the human being, is able to breathe. You understand? So boreholes are not the problem, even though they are not the solution, even though they have become a necessity by the fact of the society that we're on, which is a capitalist-driven society that has put profit over welfare, and such that it is commodifying every aspect of our lives, including access to water, which will be like a fundamental thing. So there's an increasing commercialization of water, there's an increasing commodification of water. Even when you talk about bowls, people that don't have water or don't have bowls, their company have to trek to go and buy water.
Or they sell, or they buy from the ones who have bowls.
From the ones who buy, who have bowls.
Yeah, and some of there's private sale of water.
There's private
water.
How much is minimum wage?
15 naira.
So minimum wage minimum wage is just as of last year had been approved to 70,000. Even though 120 states are not paying, and inside those 20 states, there are some people that are not even paying the formal minimum wage. People are not paying 30,000, they are not paying 30,000. And then from our research, households in many states spend because there's no water, they spend up to 30,000, 40,000 to buy water for a month, water for survival. So in that situation, it's not
at the end of the day, it becomes a problem for everybody.
Yes.
So whether or not you have borehole,
yes,
coming back.
Picking up from within your the context of your earlier analysis, you've talked about how the water challenge, is to unsafe drinking water living. That takes me remember an incident, a number of incidents last year with regards to cholera. I think it affected about 20 states.
Yeah.
Even more than. So I would really like to get your view on that, because I know that few people work extensively on this with regards to how the average Nigerian fared with regards to this outbreak. And number two is we also talked about the role of multinationals, in environmental degradation. And this is particularly rife in the South region, because I'm sure already. You understand? So, and there have been different campaigns relating to reparations. So we also want to get your view on that.
Yeah, thank you. So,
Last year, we also take us through the depths of the degradation at that department. Because I really want to get, because I know you had a lot of work in that
yeah.
area. But whatever you can tell us.
Yeah, so let me respond to the cholera question first. And I mean, it's such a shame that as from where we've come from as a country, that cholera still remains like a reoccurring. Despite all our talk about being progressive, being advanced, so our country has developed since so times. Yeah. Cholera evolved like a reoccurring feature. And every 4 years or 5 years, you still have cholera. Cholera will come around, and then you have government authorities and state institutions say, telling people, oh, you need to do like this, you need to wash your hand, or you need to make sure you're drinking clean water, you need to do different things. But we know that cholera is mostly spread by unsafe water sources, right? And also spread by contaminated water, right? And how many people in the society have access to safe and clean water? So that when we are trying to mitigate even that spread of cholera, and you advise people, for instance, last year, we had many state governments advise their population to use clean water, to make sure they wash their hands, to make sure they don't use water, and part of our response to that kind of is people don't even have water to wash. Sanitation is a big problem, as big as Lagos is. Open defecation is a thing. People still shit across my tube.
Yes.
I don't want to sound sexist. But we know the people who shit. We know the people who do it. So,
yeah, we know the people. We know the people.
You could leave my suicide, of course, and you literally see people giving out their private and then
some blackboards everywhere.
It's like this picture.
It's embarrassing.
You can't imagine.
Very embarrassing.
You can't imagine.
So Nigeria has like one of the highest rates of open defecation. Yeah, poor sanitation and hygiene. People do not have access to water. People do not have access to toilets. And for you to have a toilet, you have to have water to flush, right? But people don't have access to this thing. So it means that any space people find themselves, they're just like, let me just use this one to just do one before I don't know I'll see 1 or 2, let me do 1 or 2, I don't know where I'll get to do 1 or 2 again. So these things are problematic. So you can't have a society with a high rate of open defecation, and you don't expect things like cholera, things like waterborne diseases will not be rife in society. They will be. So, and there's so much to which a private actor can do. And like he said, for each time a private actor comes into a sector or thinks about what to in terms of intervention, it is not thinking about it from the terms of general societal welfare. It is thinking about how much money can I make out of this thing. Profit over people. So it means that the government cannot continue to rely on private actors to execute what should be a basic fundamental responsibility. So that he has to have a rethink. You cannot have a working society without public water systems. Public water systems are important. We saw that in COVID-19, during the COVID-19 era too. The instructions are wash your hands. Wash your hands at every point in time. Just wash your hands. Even if you finish doing something and you just wash your hands like 30 minutes, wash your hands again. But there is the water.
You know that at that time, people when you go to public places, public offices, local government offices, they put the buckets and they write, please wash your hands, sanitize your phone. So you attempt to wash your hands, which is over.
Okay, you're even saying that one. In some places where they keep bowls, they leave water that has been there for 9 days or like a day because they can't afford to be changing water regularly. There's no water, you can't afford to be changing water regularly. So you are trying to prevent a spread or contagion, and you are having like multiple people washing hands in the same particular container with the same unchanged water. So the problem is really deep, right? And we cannot arrive at a solution unless we begin to ask ourselves deeper questions. Like you said earlier, what is the function of government? If government outsources all its responsibilities, what are you doing? Like, what exactly do you exist to do? So they are just basic functionalities that the government cannot afford to outsource.
Let me ask you a question. You said, what does the government exist? I wanted to ask you, if you were the one who earns how much the people in government earn, if you be interested in
Hey, we have said it. We have said it before. Just like the government thinks defunding investment in public services is the way to go. We have said defund politics.
That's impossible.
Defund government positions so that people go there.
Yes, on the standpoint of service.
Yes, defund. If we are defunding, this is the first place to begin to defund. So that you go there with the mentality of service and not because I have access to all these funds that I cannot even make use of to,
The other ones are expensive goods.
Yes, because if it works like that, you would even get people to speak up forms anymore. Because what do you mean you want to pay me minimum?
Yes.
As another senator, senators will be leading the conversations on minimum wage. There's this flyer that goes on that place politicians on minimum wage and watch how minimum wage rises.
It's true. It's true. So yes, I agree with you. So we have to think critically about these things and we continue to hold government accountable because at the end of the day, the work stops at their table to do what is right. And so responding to the second question about environmental degradation, I think it's something that has been with us for a long time, from even the earliest journey of our history as a country, right? And I just want to say this, and then I'll continue. One interesting thing I found out last year was that, do you know where oil was first found in Nigeria?
I don't want Niger Delta.
Oh yeah, it's somewhere in the Niger Delta. But I was
Oloibiri.
Exactly. Yes, it's said to be Oloibiri, but really it wasn't Oloibiri. It's Otuabagi. Yes, Otuabagi is in Oloibiri, and they are both two villages in the same arena. Right? It was just found in Otuabagi. So the name somehow just became Oloibiri because by virtue of being very close to each other and some political arrangements. But as of early this year, the Otuabagi people were protesting that it should be recognized as where oil was first. That Oloibiri is not Oloibiri, it's Otuabagi.
So they're not a history.
Yeah, so it's more like their history has been erased. So you said
wiped off.
Completely wiped off.
Manipulated.
Yes, for manipulated. So they've been fighting for political revolution. That's Oloibiri is not the first nation. This of Oloibiri is Otuabagi. So, but then, the problem of environmental justice in this country has been like the general problem across all parts of the world, not just Nigeria, but accountability and the fact that we have continued to place profit over the lives of people, right? We found oil in the Niger Delta. And over the years, our activities as humans have recklessly violated ecosystems in the Niger Delta. And I've thought about the right of nature to exist as a living entity. We have continued to disrespect the right of nature to exist as a living entity, and this is largely because of the activity.
We say capitalists.
Yeah, okay.
So capitalists.
The capitalists and violent exploiters of labor and resources have continued to plunder the Niger Delta area without cause and without remorse. So what you have is swaths of places in the Niger Delta that have become economically destroyed by virtue of environmental degradation, oil pollution on lands. We have oil pollutions on river bodies. There is even a place called Ororo, I think it's New State, that has been burning. So, there's the incident of Ororo one that has been a particular place on top of the sea where local people live that has been burning for the past 5 years, ferociously, burning so hard, and nobody cares, And this has affected the species in the water. People can no longer catch fish. They are so bad. So you even talk about the Ogoni. Ogoni is also a site of historical phenomena, right? And such that it was so bad that people had to be killed on top of the matter of Ogoni. You have like Ken Sarola and other activists who were killed for voicing out the wrongs and say that this is not fair. It's not the fair way to treat people. But because corporations in cahoots with people we call compradors, local elites who feed from the misery of other people, they are in cahoots with international plunderers, multinational companies to continue to rape, forgive that French, rape the environment, rape the people, and just get away with it. So when people speak up, they are considered as threats and eliminated. You have that happen in Ipuri. And after a long resistance, it was finally decided by people that, we say no to oil exploration in this place. And for a longest time, Ogoni is and is still one of, in fact, the most polluted place on this surface, on this earth that we live in by man-made activities. And for years, we have been talking about Ogoni cleanup, Ogoni cleanup. But has that cleanup happened? Well, it hasn't happened because of the lackadaisical attitude of the government towards initiating such a cleanup and compelling the big polluters, as we know them, Shell, for instance, major polluter, to repay back historical debts by cleaning the environment that it has for all these years benefited from and left in that condition. And so Ogoni has been like that for a long time. Nothing has happened. But this is over a decade and nothing has happened. But you can imagine that early this year, he called the president began to have thoughts. Our current President Bola Ahmed Tinubu began to have thoughts. He summoned the tribal chiefs in Ogoniland to discuss the possibility of resuming oil exploration.
Are you serious?
Ogoni again. This is somewhere that has not been cleaned. These are people that have not been compensated for decades long. No justice has been gotten. You have people whose livelihood has camped because of the pollution in that area. And yet, we talk about the mentality of profits. What is of importance to the people who ruled us is, we can't allow this a profit space. So why has it been fallow for so long, so dormant for so long? We need to start making money from this today so that we can increase our oil earnings. It doesn't matter what the conversation is around there, what the conversation around justice around there. So which brings us to the point of reparations. When we talk about environmental justice, we are in the context of reparation, we are saying those who have been classified as the big polluters, those who have polluted our environment for so long and have given us nothing to show for it, we are asking that they pay back their historical debts by, restoring the environment to the way they met it. You have swaths of land areas in Niger Delta that were once green, very beautiful. I need you to go to so many parts of the Niger Delta. You can't be on water, whether by canoe. We are using, of course, it's called the Niger Delta for a reason. It's largely mangrove forest and bird of water. But the waters are slick with oil. I mean, you can put your hand in the water and you get oil out of it. That's how bad the environment.
Perfect exploited ecosystem.
There was
Agriculture.
was it roots or what was that thing?
In Port Harcourt, yes,
Suits.
yes, suits, the suits in Port Harcourt.
No, it's even very regular. Especially in
And when you
the
sneeze, you sneeze.
Yes, you go to other communities and they have they suffer gas flaring. You know, the process of refining the oil, they have to release gas, and a poor community, and you have this gas flaring night and day. You know, when gas is flaring and bringing out soot and pollution, and people are living under such conditions. You know, the irony of the Niger Delta is so sad and unfortunate that when you enter a city that most of such beaches, you are depressed. The first time I got into Bayelsa, Yenobua, I was really depressed because the city was so, I don't know how to explain it. The sky was dark. And that's because of the major soot and major.
Sometimes we get there around 4 p.m. We think that the time is 8.
Yes, you think that time is 8 p.m. For such rich cities, people that hold the economic heart of this country, it's unfortunate that they've not developed that. That's also the point of reparation. So you go to those places where I tell you that they suffer gas flaring, and you see people, because of the poverty in those areas, they are using gas flare to dry their fish. They're using gas flare to make to dry gari and do the. That's how bad it is. It's just so bad that the quality of life there is zero. And we talk about reparations and talk about state accountability at the same time, because for us to get reparations, you have to also be dealing with a state that understands the concerns of its people and what needs to be done. Recently, following from last year, there was a talk about divestment. Oil companies in their droves are divesting from the Niger Delta. And what does that mean? It means that major oil companies like Shell, like Wano, Mobil, and the rest of them, multinational corporations, are selling off their local assets to private actors, and basically just moving from all those places where they've destroyed in the Niger Delta, where they have like mounting liabilities, cases, or people who are saying you have to remediate what you've done, you have to remedy this environment. They're just basically divesting by dumping their assets on private players, and they're moving into the deep sea, Nigerian deep seas, to go and continue oil exploration. So they are leaving this particular place, and the reason why they are leaving is clear. They have so many court actions against them. They have so many cases against them that are holding them responsible for the degradation. Instead of responding to all this by doing what is right, they are instead selling up those local assets to the private players who really do not even have the historical presence or maybe the material and economic resources to manage the liabilities that they are living. These people are living leaking pipes. These people are living places that I told you are still on fire, on the water. Imagine the water burning for years and has not stopped. These people are living, just mounting responsibilities, and they're just offloading it, and nobody's saying anything. And that's why last year we went out to protest together with some community members in the Niger Delta and even in Lagos. And we were asking that, of course, we are very happy. Niger Deltans will be happy to read them, let them go. They have not benefited them. Of course, we can't say that we have not gotten monies from our oil exploration, but the monies have in no way benefited the Nigerian people, because resources continue to be ferried from the periphery, which is where we are, the periphery, to the core, which is the western populace. So you ferry our resources and use it to enrich your own political structure outside the country and leave us for it. So really, we would be glad to tell you, pack your loads, just pack everything and go. But it will be mischievous for you to pack and go without cleaning your sheets.
Yes.
So you have to clean your sheets before you leave. And that's what we were asking in comment last year, even up to even up to March this year, saying you cannot approve of such divestments without asking them to go back and clean their mess, and also provide the oversight that make sure that they have cleaned up the environment, and then they can leave.
Yeah.
That's fine. The government can now oversee and control and control that environment. So, but unfortunately, that has not happened. Unfortunately, that has not happened. We've had these cries ignored, and we've seen many of these companies successfully divest and just offload to local companies that do not have the resources or economy. When you offload, nobody can call Sharon again and say, "Sure, you're responsible for this thing that happened last year." Say, "No, I'm not." Yes, I think this is a company and gone. And it's also because I need to make this point too. It's also because of the lack of accountability and trust that the people have in the government that has seen a lot of overseas cases against oil companies by the Niger Deltans, right? So you have people now taking their cases outside the country as international courts, putting the international body of such multinational corporations on check because they can't trust our local authorities to do what is right. So it's a long way. It's unfortunate that environmental degradation is a feature of our existence, and especially for the people so rich in resources. And we know what can be realized moving forward, even from our resources. So it's both a failure of the states.
I want to take you back to water again. Sometime last year, I think Lagos State Water Corporation sacked a number of workers. I don't know exact. Maybe you may want to point us to that, but I've forgotten the exact number of workers that were sacked. Do you consider this some of the flip sides of the ongoing privatization program going on within that sector? And what exactly should trade unions and civil society be doing?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, obviously, the mass sack of workers is an outcome of the privatization model. What we've seen in this sort of situation is that, especially the public water sector, which has continued to source for loans from international financiers, majorly the World Bank. So one of the conditions that, amongst other conditions that the World Bank gives in favor of that loan, in favor of many of those loans, is that the State Public Water Corporation, like I told you, must remove itself from its responsibility of providing water to the people. According to the World Bank logic, public water is not the business of government. And even though cost recovery is a thing, yes, because of course government have to balance provision of water and also how to also make sure that facility is running up and running. But the World Bank says that, look, this thing is not your thing. For us to be able to give you money, remember that these monies are loans and they probably come with service charges and interest. For us to be sure that you can repay back, you have to open up your sector for private actors to come in. So yes, it is an outcome of privatization and corporatization, no matter the word that they want to paint it. Our research last year on 3 states, Rivers State, Ekiti, and Bauchi State, that received a World Bank loan on the National Urban Water Program to improve their water sector. The loan condition said explicitly that these states must open up their water sector to private actors. And part of the conditions too is that, of course, when private actors want to play in a sector, they pride themselves on a lean management. They say, oh, too much people, can't be wasting money on too much people. We have to use 2 people to do the job of 10 men.
people.
We have to use like 1 person to do the job of 5 people. So, we can get more out of this kind of, model. So, yes, the retrenchment and sack of workers are part of it. First of all, it started with the sack of contract workers in December 2023. And by the time people were still trying to recover from that, I'm talking about Lagos State.
Yes.
They hit again, and which we had already seen coming. That this, in fact, we saw that because when the when the management of the Lagos Water Corporation changed, part of the progress that the current management said it was going to undertake was to cut down the size of workers. And so we saw it already coming, even though this thing was this declaration or this submission was made at an international interview. Our governments don't talk to us,
Of course.
they'll rather go outside and talk
So
to
we hear it from the news.
So we hear it from the news, right? So we had it from a source called Global Water Intelligence, that this is part of the things that it's going to do. It's going to bring fresh hands. It's going to do this one. It's going to do that one. And so, of course, when the sack of the contract workers happened in December 2023, we saw it. We said, this is it. And they are still going to come for even those who are permanent workers. And that the labor union needs to now be on its toe to begin to resist that kind of attack. And it happened. So within a space of 3 months, permanent workers were illegally retrenched and asked to, abandon their jobs, and making a total of more than 800 workers at the Lagos Water Corporation that were retrenched. So when you add both the contracts and permanent staff, yes, and these were the people that were
800. That's a lot.
Yes, that were retrenched, and these are people with enormous experience. We're talking about years of experience of managing water facilities and managing water resources. And for these people, they want to work, but the infrastructure is not working. So how do you now blame them? Do you understand? So these are like some of the issues. And what we expected of labor unions to do and workers unions was to mobilize like around that very important issue, and to state the rights of workers to own their jobs, and enforce on the government to do what is right. We don't even see the MOUs that are signed between state authorities.
I think Opta had a protest regarding that last year.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's a different conversation if it got sustained. And,
Yes. So yes, Opta did have a protest, and we are also part of that protest, and part of some of the planning. So like you said, whether it was sustained to the extent at which the whole move was rejected is another conversation entirely. So and what happened, right? So I think that we need to begin to build resilience in the labor union. We need to also begin to build a labor union that is critical and understands its role in promoting the fundamental rights of workers.
So, comrade, the coming of the Dangote refinery and the reaction from the people about it. I've seen a lot of people who have said, oh, we now have made in Nigeria Petro. We now have made in Nigeria this. It would reduce blah, blah, blah. We don't have to take our crude oil to, you don't have to export and then import again like it's the practice. A lot of Nigerians see the Dangote refinery as a solution to the problems of exploitation, environmental degradation that we have. Initially we deal with the multinationals. Now they say because it is our own person, our own made in Nigeria person, it's like a solution to the problems we have. Do you think that the coming of the Dangote refinery is a form of solution to the social and economic problem of the average working class Nigerian
and we are still
people?
paying them in dollars.
I think at this point, everybody eye don't open, right? When at the early stages, there was, of course, you cannot blame people when people have been so used to lack and inattention from their government. When they see something different from another place, they'll be like, oh,
my
that's
God,
the
the
entire
best thing after
solution, you know.
rice.
Dangote is coming to take away all our problems. We'll now have a made, like you said, made in Nigeria. Made in Nigeria is different from made in our the price of Dangote. So the truth is that, no doubt, Dangote refinery is a major industrial undertaking, right? But it still remains a Dangote refinery. There's a reason why it's called Dangote.
Dangote
It's not a
refinery.
It's not
Nigeria.
Nigeria.
It's not Nigeria
refinery.
refinery.
Dangote refinery.
There's Dangote
It's not
there.
it's not carrying
Eh-heh.
Pedro
It's-
refinery.
it's
I
not-
wish it was.
It's not, it's not carrying Pedro refinery. It's not carrying
Carrying
Nigeria. It's not carrying anything. It's called Dangote, and Dangote is going to operate to benefit Dangote, which is to maximize profits, right? And we've seen it. When it was first becoming a thing, people were so happy, you know, and people were saying, Dangote, this one, that one, blah 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 blah. The fuel price is going to be cheap. But since last year, we've seen the tough fight between Dangote
And they're still saying they want to increase.
and they're still saying they want to increase. Today they will increase this one. And you know the worst, the pricing of Dangote's fuel is not a Nigerian price. It is
International
dependent
market.
on the international market. So it means that you have no gain whatsoever. And even at the point where there was a negotiation between the Dangote refinery and the Nigerian government, that the Nigerian government would be supplying it crude oil that it would refine and then be able to sell. Maybe that will reduce its price. We had the Nigerian government at some point tell us that they've even sold crude oil in advance to people just to collect money. They've sold like 10
We
years.
have used it to borrow money.
They have used it to borrow money. We've borrowed money that's collected our crude 10 years upward now. So that there's not even crude to give Dangote. Because all that crude now is a loan that we are repaying back for the money that we have collected from. When they collected this money, we didn't know. When they used
we didn't
the crude,
benefit.
we didn't benefit to bargain. So what's the point? So when Dangote cannot receive crude oil from the Nigerian government, he has to import. And importing means it's importing in dollars and the rest of and foreign denominated currency. So its market has to reflect. So it means that it is not the promised Messiah that that people envisioned it to be. And of course, it cannot be, because it is not a public entity. It is not prone to your sentiment, emotions, or your welfare, whatever. It's going to work.
They no even send us
It
future
has to work to make profit.
They don't send
When we
us.
talk about environmental degradation, is it different? Of course, it's not different. We've had situations, in fact, as of last 2 years, we had people around the Beju-Lekki area where Dangote is located, begin to reach out to us to tell us that they were scared that the operations of Dangote refinery is going to also disrupt their livelihood, which is mainly fishing. And in fact, it began to happen. Most of them were also displaced, because as the corporation began to acquire community lands, it meant that they had to displace people so that it can acquire community lands and other things. And they have also started complaining that they are beginning to see the kind of environmental degradation that is rife in the Niger Delta.
It's already manifesting.
Yes, it's already manifesting, and it's going to get worse if there's no accountability for it. So at the end of the day, like I say, the responsibility still lies on government, right? So Dangote is not. He's a player like every other person. So, and he's going to play according to the rules that favors his game.
It's been an interesting conversation. I'm sure the production team will soon come and use cane to chase all of us away from this place. But
They're already protesting.
Yes.
Let us end before they form a labor union. Yeah.
Before they start
Well,
carrying placards and everything. Solidarity, comrades. Solidarity. Thank you so much, Comrade Zikora. It's been an amazing and insightful, discussion with you. All of these issues put together: water, oil, environmental justice, the degradation larger body is, removing itself from issues that other unions are facing. What would be your words to trade unions and the labor movement
In general.
I think the labor union and trade union have to go back to the drawing board. And when I say go back to the drawing board, it has to find its lost reconnection to the people. There is a disconnect right now between the labor unions, trade unions, and the ordinary people. And that is because the people have been bamboozled for so long that they can no longer trust their leadership or sometimes what they say, right? And so it is important that trade unions and labor unions begin to rebuild that trust again. And until that trust is rebuilt, the problem, the conversation about organizing for better or challenging the powers that be cannot really hold ground until that trust is rebuilt. So the labor unions, trade unions, they cannot work in isolation of the people. So they need to reconnect back to the roots.
people.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So till we meet again, the next.
In the third episode of this podcast, once again, we appreciate Comrade Zikora Ibeh for coming on the show with us, and our appreciation to the FES for its support, the podcast. See you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.